Gurubhyo Namaha Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hare Om Tat Sat. So we would proceed. We had done the verse number 43, and that I had given a long lecture to virtually cover what we would be doing in the next 3-4 verses. And what we had done, we had done till the verse number, we had completed. Yeah, so we had done it, the verse number 42. Jatha Munjadi Shika. So you see, the way you extract the ishika, the inner thread like substance in a grass by removing the outer layers, then similarly you will distinguish, analyze, and have a good, clear understanding of Atma. How do you extract it? Not physically. Yuktya, samadhrataha, sarira tritiyat dhirehi param brahmeva jayate. What are these three bodies? The three bodies are Sthula, Shukshma, and Karana Sarira. And then kindly mute yourselves, all of you, kindly. Yeah, so, yeah, so you would be able to reach that stage. And then we have done the commentary, I did not revisit. And then he's saying in the verse number Parat parat manor evam yuktya sambhavite gata. So para and apara, atmanaha, so jiva and ishvara, have these. So you would establish samanadhikaranya, that they are one and the same substance with two names and basically two different upadhis. And how do you reach there? With the help of Mahavakya Tattvamasyadi. Why you are mentioning Adi? Because that is not the only Mahavakya. We have 4 Mahavakyas in 4 Vedas. In fact, one of the chapters of Panchadashi is dedicated to a very detailed discussion of all these 4 Mahavakyas and a few important statements even in Brahma Sutra, because this is a very comprehensive and a little difficult but very comprehensive introduction to Vedanta. So this is one of the Mahaprakarana Grantha, so to say. Tattva Vakyehi sa bhagatyagena lakhyate. What is bhagatyaga lakshana? Also, we have discussed at length. You have jahada lakshana, you have ajahada lakshana, you have jahada ajahada lakshana. What is lakshana? One is, you see, you have a sakti sambandho, sakya sambandho lakshana. So there is a particular word and it has a direct meaning. If the denotative meaning can be reached directly without interpreting it, that is simple vachyartha. But lakshyartha, what is intended, if you are taking help of some interpretation instead of making a simple equation between what is said and what is being referred to, that is lakshana vritti. And we had done a long discussion on that in the last one. I'm not revisiting it again. Now, how does this Tattvamasyadi Vakya gives Tattvamasi, you are that? We had some discussion. The Jiva is Kinchit Gya, it knows a little. Alpastitiman, Kiyat Khyana Stitiman, we are here for a few seconds, in the sense, few years. And Brahman is here for all time. It has no beginning, no end. How can Jiva become Ishvara? That's a very foundational challenge, very difficult, logical, stumbling block to get over and say that we are one and the same thing. Therefore, he's saying, no, you have to do it. Sa ekata tattvamasyadi vakyehi spastam. It will become clear. How? Bhagatyagena. So he adds that viruddhangsha parityagena lakhyate lakshana vrityacha buddhyate. Viruddhangsha parityaga. In that you will come again. Soyam devadattaha. I was giving that example in the last class. There was a little boy in your class. He was very cute. He was very nutty, playful. And today we're meeting him, and that guy is grown up with a child, and he's got a job, he's got a car, he's got very well-established social status. Where is that little boy who used to fight with everyone? Was a naughty boy. So Biruddhansa Parityaga, he was about 2.5 feet or 3 feet as a little boy. Now he's 6 feet and 4 inches or 3 inches, very tall guy. So the Biruddhansa height has to be now taken out of the discussion. Similarly, he was few pounds and now he's like 160 pounds. Big difference. Now get rid of it. Similarly, you remove everything. What stays? Son of Mr. X, that is still there. It applies to both the little boy and the grown-up man. And then you have a surname, and then the person. He identifies himself. He studied in the same school. He did a few things that you both know about. That is what is that particular thing? The same Jiva was a little boy has become grown-up man with a wife and children, with a job, with a new social standing. So you do bhagatyaga lakshana, means you remove viruddhangsha parityagena. That is what happens. Lakhyate lakshana vritya bodhyate. Now, tattvamasyadi, tattvamasi iti vakyartha jnanasya tadadi padartha jnana purvagatvat tatpadasya vacyartham tavataha. Now, this is a very beautiful process that we are going to engage with today. Tat Tvam Asi, there are 3 words there. Tat is that, Tvam is you, thou art that. There are 3 words. First, we will do Lakshana of these 3 words. First, we have to understand what is Vachyartha of each of these words and what is Lakshartha of each words. And first, he is going to explain what is that Tad. What is that Tad? This Tad, which refers to Brahman, has 2 upadhis. Before we get into the text, I'm just giving you I'm just giving you a trailer, a kind of quick introduction. I'm in a way divulging the secret. Tat here is referring to the Param Brahman, Tat Padartha Ishvara. It has 2 upadhis. One upadhi is Tama Pradhana. The other one is Suddha Sattva Pradhana. So that is the Suddha Sattva Pradhana means what is, it's called Maya Vachinna Chaitanya, defined by Maya. In a way circumscribed, characterized by a Maya Upadhi, a certain label which you put on it. That is Maya Upadhi. The other one is Tama Pradhana. What is tamas? Darkness or vidya, whatever you call it. Okay. So there are 2 upadhis of Brahman, and in the context of these 2 upadhis or 2 ways of describing it or subjecting it to 2 contextualities, Brahman is not delimited by anything. How can it be subjected to 2 different contexts? No. There are 2 different contexts in which we are trying to understand Brahman. Let's switch it and then understand it. So let's do charanam of this verse number 44 first. Jagato yad upadhanam mayamada yatamasim nimitam suddha sattvam tam mujjati brahma tadgira. Tad, gira means by the word tad. Jagataha yad upadanam. This whole material universe we see, Jagataha, of this Jagat, yad upadanam. What is the material cause? Okay, elementary material cause. And what is that? Mayam adaya tamasim. That Maya can be Suddha Sattva Pradhana or also can be Tama Pradhana. Tamasim, that is the adjective given. That Maya, which is Tamasi, Tama Pradhana, Maya. That is what is the material cause of the universe. Nimitam Suddha Sattvam Tam Uchyati Brahma Tadgira. And the same Maya, if it is Suddha Sattva Samparna, that becomes the what is called the efficient cause or nimitta karana. Tam uchyate tad gira, by the word tad. Okay, Brahma Tadgira. The same Brahman then has two upadhis. One is that tamasic upadhi, the other one is that Suddha Sattva Samparna, that Maya, both aspects. Here, one thing I would like to clarify, there are certain Vedantic thinkers who would like to distinguish between avidya, Maya, right? And some people like to distinguish between Prakriti and Maya. But ultimately, in very clear terms, they are all Paryavachaka. Maya, Prakriti, Avidya. These are all referring to the one and the same thing. Okay? A certain delusional labeling of the Brahman which gives the Brahman the ability to act, because actually Brahman doesn't act, it's above everything, it's pure. It's Nirakara, Nishkriya, Nirguna. Okay? Then how do we explain samsara? There have to be some theoretical devices. You need to have some conceptual explanatory devices with you to be able to explain samsara. Sansar kaise banega? How do you explain this samsara? Therefore, these are theoretical tools. Maya is a concept that has been introduced in the Vedantic discourse to explain what is this samsara. People like Ballavacharya or Ramanujacharya, they don't take the help of this word called Maya to explain samsara. Bhagwan has enough creative energy to do whatever he wants. They refer to the sovereignty. Okay, and so they don't have this kind of a deficiency, because their Ishvara is in a way Saguna, is the Purushottama, is not Nirguna Nirakara, because they don't go to that level of Nirguna Nirakara. They do not have to introduce a theoretical device to explain that Saguna, all-powerful Ishvara, Purushottama, Parameshwara. So between Parameshwara and Nirguna Brahma, we have to introduce this concept of Maya. And with that introduction, now we have Jagat, material cause is that Tama Pradhana Maya, and Nimitta Karana. So God is the Abhinna Nimitta Upadana Karana, as they say. How can both be at one locus? That's explained by giving this Jatha Udna Nahi. Now look at the spider. Now the spider, in a way, is the material cause, because out of his own saliva, it knits that whole net, isn't it? So it's the creator. And what is the material cause? It itself is the material cause, because out of its own saliva, it creates that whole net. Similarly, the creator is compared with that spider, which knits, weaves this whole net of samsara. There is another beautiful, good example which is given in Vedanta classes to explain how can one person be both material as well as the efficient cause of the samsara. When we talk about a potter, who is working, he is doing pottery. So there is clay, like in Christianity, they said God made man in his own image out of clay. Now, where was clay? Where did God find clay? Now, in Vedanta, God doesn't find any clay. There's nothing outside of Brahman. Everything is within it. So you can't imagine anything which is there out of which. Now, if you look at the Nyaya Vaisheshika philosophers, they accept the atom as eternal, nitya. They all accept one superior nimitta karana, or efficient cause. The Christians, Jews, and the Muslims, and all the Hindus and everyone, except Buddhists, they all accept there is a nimitta karana, efficient cause. That Parameshwara who wishes and creates, so is a creative God. Now, Vedanta brings in a new twist to this whole discussion, saying that, yes, there is this efficient cause, which is Parameshwara, the Nimitta Karana God. But that's only one level of upadhi. And beyond that reality, the absolute reality is beyond this Nimitta Karana. So, Abhinna Nimitta Karana, that Brahman is Abhinna Nimitta Upadana Karana, both material cause as well as the efficient cause. So how that same God can become material cause, one example is the spider. Another example, which we might see every day, in Vedanta Acharyas tell us the story. I have heard it from my Acharya. The story is like this. Once what happened is a rich businessman or a landlord kind of thing who owns an estate and stuff like that in a rural area, he went to some party and he got drunk. And he walked back home and he lived alone. And there was a servant, he had a servant and a few other people to help him. So he enters home and he's completely drunk. And when he enters his house, goes to his bedroom, and the servant follows him. He's so drunk, he takes off the servant comes and takes off his overcoat. He said, "Don't disturb him. Today he's very drunk." And having said this, this landlord carries his overcoat as if that overcoat is the landlord. And very kindly, carefully, he lays down that overcoat on the bed and then covers that overcoat with the blanket. And he goes and sits on a chair. The servant again comes and says, "Sir, what happened?" He said, "Don't disturb. The boss will get angry. Today he had a very good meal. There was an argument with somebody. He took a little extra alcohol. He's completely drunk. Let him sleep." Who is saying this? The landlord. Whom is he referring to? He is referring to his own overcoat. And what is he addressing the overcoat as? Boss. He is referring to his own overcoat as boss, and he's sitting on the chair like a servant looking after, or like a grandfather or an old father of that son who's got drunk. He's all is himself. Who is the father of this landlord? He is the father. But what is that person that is being referred to as the landlord? It is his overcoat. It is not him. Now, I'm giving this example for us to understand Jagataha yad upadanam maya mada yatamasim. So he's drunk. And he is the father of that landlord. Okay, that fatherhood is also imaginary because he's not the father. And the landlord who is sleeping on the bed is actually just the overcoat. That is also imaginary. So what is creating whole game? Some alcohol. That is the upadhi. That is the ajnana. That is the maya. That has played the trick. So you have now the father of the landlord, and the landlord is sleeping on the bed, and it's basically the overcoat. Now, the Ishvara, who has created this whole samsara, Shankaracharya gives this example that rope appears as a snake. The same Brahman is appearing as a samsara, this whole material universe. And this is out of what? We have already discussed it. Out of these, Bhagavan creates these tanmatras and hiranyagarbha, and these sukshma bhutas are created of the tamasic aspect. Their panchabhutas are created. Out of the rajasika aspect, he creates these karmendriyas. And out of the sattvangsha, sattvic aspect, he creates the jnanendriyas. That is how we have discussed the creation of the manomaya kosha, vijnanamaya kosha, pranamaya kosha. And annamaya kosha is out of the tamasika angsha. The annamaya kosha at the level of jiva is the material frame in which the jiva, establishes, kind of exists. Similarly, if you extend it, this whole material universe is with these panchabhutas, and the panchabhutas are panchakrita tanamatras. Out of the tamasika angsha, all these physical reality and phenomena that we see around us are essentially an emanation out of that absolute truth principle, which you can call God or absolute or Brahman. But remember, it is the out of the tamasika aspect. The tamasika aspect is not paramarthika. Like that overcoat of the landlord is not paramarthika. But at that moment, he is the father and that is the son. Is the landlord who is drunk and he's looking after his own son, sitting on the chair. He himself is fully drunk. That upadhi makes him father, and that upadhi also makes that overcoat his son. Exactly like that. Jagatah yad upadanam maya mada yatamasim nimitam suddha sattvam tam. And you have rajas and tamas is dominating, then we'll go to the jiva. But right now it's complete tamas. Malina sattva is jiva. It's complete tamas is that material frame of this whole universe. And then suddha sattvam nimittam tam uchyate. With the word tad, we refer to it, and that is what is called Ishvara. So it's one thing, two upadhis, two levels of reality, the material reality and the creator God. Let's look at the commentary. Yagataha iti yat Satchidananda Lakshanam Brahma. That Brahman, which is known as Satchidananda. Sat is that true, is absolute, it's not anitya. Chit is conscious, it's not jada. And Ananda is that. Otherwise, why should we be interested in moksha, which is absolute, truth, right? And consciousness and bliss. That Surupatmaka Lakshanam Brahma Tamasim Tamoguna Pradhana Mayam Adaya Upadhitvena. So it wears the cap of this Tamasika Maya, Tamoguna Pradhana Maya. Then what it happens? Upadhitvena Svikritya, when it accepts, it assumes that particular thing. Jagataha Characharatmakasya. Chara and Achara. You have the moving and non-moving. Okay, so you have the animate and inanimate realities. Jagataha characharatmakasya karya vargasya. These are the created things. These are the karya because it is the karana now. It is the upadana karana, that is the karya varga. Vargasya upadana adhyasa adhisthana. Is it real? Is that overcoat which is sleeping on the bed the real landlord? No. It's just an overcoat. It's an overcoat. But he is referring to that as the landlord. Similarly, saying what happens is karya vargasya upadanam. Upadana means what? Adhyasa adhishtanam. Because that is what we see, that this is the reality. Out of that superimposition, it becomes the foundation. You see the snake. What is the foundation? The rope. Similarly, Suddha Sattvam, Vishuddha Suddha Pradhanam, that is Jagati is gone, this one. Suddha Sattvam, Vishuddha Sattva Pradhanam, Tam Upadhitvena Svikritva. Now that is gone. Now we are talking about the Ishvara aspect of the same Brahman. When it takes the sattvic angsha, that means rajasika and tamasika are almost invisible. Therefore, it is transparent and luminous, that aspect of the same Maya. When upadhitvena svikritya, it accepts and assumes that. Then what happens to it? Nimittam upadana, the avigyam kartru bhavati. So it becomes what? There is a nimitta, it becomes a nimitta, and then it becomes the karta of the upadana. There is a potter. It will create a pot. How does it create a pot? How does pottery happen? You have an agent. Then you have that wheel, the karana, right? So you have that instrument, and then you have material clay, you need some water. Then you have that vyapara. It moves that wheel. Then the pot is formed. Then it chops it with the help of a thread and hammers it a little, gives it a certain shape and allows it to dry. That is how we get a pot. Now, this karta is the same thing. Okay? He is essentially taking care of his son, which is actually his overcoat. So these are all assumptions. And he has become the father, looking after his son. He is one and the same guy. He has created this distinction between father and son. It's just one reality. There is no father, no son there. In fact, that guy who's sleeping on the bed is just an overcoat. So he's saying nimittam upadanadi avigyam kartru habati. So he's an expert in how the clay is there, how the pot can be formed. Similarly, the Ishvara is acting on his own material manifestation, and he is the boss. Of what? This sansara himself only. He's saying avigyam kartru bhavati tad brahma nimittopadana ubhayurupam brahma tadagira. Tat sabda. Now you are referring tad brahma nimittopadana Ubhaya Rupam Brahma Tad Gira Tattvamasi iti Vakyena Tat Pada Padena Uchyate. Tat Pada, you're actually referring to that. So, what is the summary? The summary is like this: Tama Pradhana Bhuta Maya Madaya. That Maya, if you take into consideration the Tama Pradhanata of that Maya, then what? Sustehe Upadana Karani Bhutam. That is the material cause of this whole created universe. Suddha Sattva Pradhana Tamadaya, same Maya, which is Suddha Sattva Pradhana, if you take that into account, Nimitti Bhutam Cha Brahma, Susti Ghataka, this now becomes the creator. Tat Sabda Avideyam Bhavati Ityarthaha. So it becomes Tat Pada Avideya. That word is being used. Now, just for a little, explanation, there is a sentence in the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad Bhashya, in the Tritiya Adhyaya, Ashtama Brahmana, the 12th mantra. He writes, Avidya Kama Karma Vishishta Karya Karana Upadhi Atma Sansari Jiva Uchyate. We'll go there in the next verse. The Jiva and Ishvara, what is the distinction? He's saying, Avidya Kama Karma Vishishta. Avidya Karma Karma Vishishta Karya Karana Upadhi Atma Sansari Jiva Uchyate. Nitya Niritisaya Jnana Sakti Upadhi Atma Antaryami Ishvara Uchyate. So the Jiva thing we'll discuss in the next verse. So who is the Ishvara here? Nitya Niritisaya Jnana Sakti Upadhi Atma. You see, our jnana, we as jivas, our jnana is also not permanent. What does it mean? You see, we read something, we understand. It doesn't stick in our mind for a long time. It may evaporate. Our memory is not permanent. And then we can know about a particular object on which we are focusing our minds. God cannot do that. If he does that, then he cannot be God, because he will not be able to handle this whole universe. There are so many animals and humans. He's supposed to look after all the time. So look at his jnana, his ichha, his prayatna, whatever efforts he's doing, you see, these are all nitya, sarvatmaka. There is no limitation of these qualities, if at all. We are talking about the Shaguna Brahman. Then these are the qualities of Ishvara, are a Nitya and a Vibhu. There is no limitation. They are Vyapako. Otherwise, he cannot be Ishvara. Therefore, he's saying Nitya Niritisaya Jnana. He has to become Sarvagya. Otherwise, how does he handle this whole universe? He cannot remain as the boss of this whole universe. And what is that Sarvagyatva? And what is that Alpagyatva of the Jiva? Or the Jadatva of this whole material universe? Vedanta says these are upadhis. These are essentially labels. These are levels of manifestation from the standpoint of the person who is trying to conceptualize them. They remain the same. Okay? So these are only distinctions that we are doing. Now let's go to so that is Tat. In Tattvamasi, Tatpada. Also we'll look at the material universe, which is Tama Pradhana Maya Madaya, then Ishvara, Sattva Pradhana Maya Madaya. That much is clear to us. Tat Padartha we have done. Now this is the Lakshartha. What is the Vachyartha? Ishvara. Lakshartha will reach. The Vachyartha is Ishvara. What does it mean? That we know. Now what is the Tvam Padartha? He's explaining Tvam Padartha. Yada Malina Sattvam Tam Kama Karmadi Dushitam Adatte Tat Param Brahma Tvang Padena Taduchyate. Yada. Now, Yada Tada, when we use it in Vedanta, the time, it's a sequence of time. Are we referring to? No, absolutely not. Because Jiva is anadi. It has no beginning, because it's an endless reality. It's an endless manifestation. So what are the Jiva Isho Vishuddhachita Tatha Jiva Shoyor Vida, Avidya Tatchitar Yogaha, Sadasmakam Anadayaha. That is a standard statement. What is this? Jiva Isho Vishuddha Chit. Jiva, Ishvara, and Vishuddha Chit means Nirguna Brahma. Jiva Sayor Vida, and Jiva and Ishvara, the difference, the distinction between Jiva and Ishvara. Remember now 4 elements. Jiva, Ishvara, that Vishuddha Chaitanya, and the relationship and the difference between Jiva and Ishvara. These 4, and then Avidya, Tat Chitar Yoga, Avidya, Maya, and the relationship between Avidya and Brahman. You see, without some kind of a semblance of an imaginary relationship between Maya and Brahman, how do you explain this whole samsara? Now, when did that relationship between Maya and Brahman happen? Because then only this whole Ishvara will come, right? Jiva will come, Sansar will come. When did it happen? It didn't happen. This is Anadi. Why do you have to presume they are eternal? And not eternal, but they are without beginning. Why do you have to say this? Because look, they're saying that if you are seeing a snake in a row, the snake doesn't have a date of birth. This is delusional because this is an appearance, this is a projection. You're going to talk about its origin. The moment you saw and you confuse that as snake, that is evident. From when? Well, your ajnana is without a beginning. So avidya also doesn't have a beginning. Avidya doesn't have a beginning. Jiva doesn't have a beginning. Ishvara doesn't have a beginning. The distinction between Jiva and Ishvara doesn't have a beginning. And avidya doesn't have a beginning. Brahman doesn't have a beginning. The relationship between Maya and avidya and Param Brahma has no beginning. Chaitanya and avidya has no beginning, the relationship. So how do we get out of it? No, you don't have any problem. I only said, the Vedanti will say, it doesn't have a beginning. I never said it doesn't have an end. I never said it doesn't have an end. So when it has an end, it has an end when you realize the Brahman. Because once you have this Brahma consciousness, you have that Akhanda, Chidakasa Chaitanya Rupa, Sachidananda Swarupa, it's Akhandaika Rasha. There is no distinction, there is no limitation. Now there will be no more any Jiva and Ishvara at that state. If there is no Jiva and Ishvara, there will be no distinction between Jiva and Ishvara. There will not be any avidya and Brahman and a distinction. No, there will be only one thing. Vishuddha Chit, that is only without beginning, without end. All of it. Vishuddha Chit is the only thing which would be there. It was there because that is the Nitya Vastu. All others have beginning, but they lose their relevance, they lose their meaning. There is nothing that you can use to think of them, feel them when you're in that pure consciousness. Because it's that unified, undivided field of unified consciousness where that pure luminosity is that ineffable reality, it blossoms. There's nothing else there. That is what is the Vedanta way of talking about the truth. Truth alone is true, and the rest of it is only stories. So that is the Visuddha Chit. So Sarasmakam Anadayaha, that we remember, therefore he's saying, Yada Malina Sattvam Tam Kama Karmadi Dushitam. That Malina Sattva Swarupa, that Jiva we are talking about. So Malina Sattvam Tam, that Mayam, Malina Sattvam, and what is wrong with it? Why are you saying it's Malina Sattva? What is wrong with the Sattvika aspect? He's saying Kama Karmadi Dushitam. Because it is overwhelmed with the presence of Kama and a Karma. Kama is a dynamic, that interactive aspect. And then Karma, and Kama is about that desire. Now, there are several interesting stories. You know, Bhagavan in the Bhagavad Gita, saying, Sarvarambha hi doshena dhumena agniriva abritaha, in the 18th chapter, 48th verse. Whatever you do, don't stop doing work. That work is imperfect. Karma is imperfect. Because he's saying, Sarvarambha, whatever you do, there will be some imperfection. Why? Because you are moved by Trigunatmika Maya. It cannot be perfect. Only when you have Atmajnana, you overcome it. That's a different story. Till then, whatever you do cannot be perfect, and you need not worry. Therefore, he's saying, Sarvarambha hi doshena dhumena agni iva avritaha. Whenever you have some fire, okay, there's going to be some smoke, and don't you worry. But similarly, this jiva is kama karmadi dushitam. Okay. But remember one thing, that it is that tvam padartha. That means again the same Brahma. Assuming that upadhi of malina sattva becomes jiva. Otherwise, we have no future. We cannot get liberated. So first, Vedanta gives us that validity that we are Suddha Buddha Mukta Swarupaha with a mask of Malina Sattva. With this mask of Malina Sattva, we are Jivas. We are all Sachidananda Swarupa, but we are like that Halloween, we are wearing a mask of Jiva. We are human beings, male, female, all that. And then so many ways in which we present ourselves. Not only we present ourselves, we are also fascinated by how others are presenting themselves. So we are essentially more vulnerable to the forms in which the lies are articulated, the truth of life is articulated. That interests us. So morning to night, you look at Facebook, Instagram, with a bunch of lies. But then we do dumb scrolling. You look at these reels and pictures, and what do you see there? Any of it is anything to do with reality? No, nothing. But then that is what draws your attention. That's how the mind keeps jumping around. And it has a style of getting entangled in this musical chair of different Vishaya Sanyoga. You have one musical chair, right? You play musical chair. Whatever chair is available, you'll go and grab it. And that is all the time looking for a chair. It's looking for a Vishaya Sanyoga. Where can I connect with some subject matter? Either you read a book or this or that, or you look at a picture, or look at a cricket match, read some news, do some office work, talk to children, go to a park. It requires some kind of a entanglement. And that is the musical chair that it keeps playing. When all the chairs are moved by jnana, finally there's no chair left. When all chairs are gone, then only you return to yourself. Yada malina sattvam tam kam karmadi dushitam adatte tat param brahma tvam padena tadochyate. When this param brahma assumes that particular mask of malina sattva, it becomes that jiva. It becomes jiva. Okay, it becomes that jiva, as Shankaracharya says. So kama karmadi dosha, assuming that it is called the jiva. It's essentially an upadhi, a certain level. Now look at the commentary. That is what is tattvamasi. The tvam here is jiva. It is essentially one upadhi. Because it is an upadhi, it's possible that we can throw away the upadhi to recover our pure self, our own identity. Adate tat param brahma tvam padena taduchyate. Let's look at the commentary. Yada iti. Tadeva Brahma, that very same Brahman, Yada, Yasyam Avasthayam. I told you Yada means when, no. It's not referring to a point in time. Absolutely not. He's saying that during that context of Upadhi, Yasyam Avasthayam, in that state in which we are talking about an attribution, a certain assumption of Upadhi, it has become Jiva. Malina Sattvam. What is this Malina Sattva? It will keep coming in Vedanta again and again. Ishad Rajaha Tamo Mishranina. There is a bit of intermixing. It's not pure gold. It's like not even 18 karat gold. It's like maybe 14 karat gold. 14 is also gold. No, it may be 10 karat gold or 7 karat gold. Gold has become very costly. There is some sattva, but it's 7 karat gold. And other materials, alloys are placed in it. So he's saying, so Mishranena Malina Sattvas Pradhanam Ata Eva Kama Karmadi Dushitam Tam Avidya Sabdavatyam Maya Madate. Now he's saying, because you might ask this question, sometimes you talk about avidya, sometimes you talk about Malina Sattva Pradhana, then you say Maya, then you say Prakriti. What are you referring to? He's saying, look here, that avidya sabdavatyam, whatever you are referring to is avidya in our Vedantic language, that is Maya only. Maya madate upadhitvena svikaroti. It accepts that as a certain level. And when it accepts that, then what happens is that it becomes jiva. Svikarati tada tvam padena uchyate. That is verily referred to with the word tvam pada. Okay? So, Tattvamasi, what is Tat Ishvara? That Ishvara Tat has a tamasic aspect. What is this material universe? That becomes Ishvara with pure Sattva. And Tvam is that Malina Sattva Pradhana, means not Tama Pradhana. Therefore, there is a distinction between the Jada Prakriti and the Jiva, right? All of us. So there is a distinction. Now, how do you now graduate to the next level? What is the next level? The next level is making sense of the sentence Tattvamasi. That is explaining now. Evam Tattva Padartha Avidhaya Vakyartham Aya Tattvam. The meaning of these two words, how to make sense of it, he has explained. Now, what is the Vakyarth? How do I make sense of this word? Thou, you are talking about Jiva. It is Malina Sattva Pradhana. Then you are talking about Ishvara, Suddha Sattva Pradhana. Then you are saying Tattvamasi, you are that. How can Malina Sattva Pradhana be same as Suddha Sattva Pradhana Ishvara? Right? Very difficult question. Therefore, in order to explain, how can you say Jiva Brahmiva Naparaha? It's very difficult. Therefore, he is now explaining it. Tattvam Padartha Padartho Avidhaya. Tat and Tam Padartha, both having explained them, Vakyarthamaha in 1 Shloka 46. Tritaim Mapitam Muktva Paraswara Birodhinim Akhandam Satchidanandam Mahavakyena Lakshyate. Now, Tritaim Api. So, Tam Muktva, Tritaim Mayam Muktva means, having abandoned. How would you abandon? He will explain. Muktva means Parityajya, having left, by renouncing, forsaking, dismissing. How do you dismiss it? How do you get rid of it? Paraswara Virodhinim. So you will do Bhagatyaga Lakshana in order to bring that equation to a working semblance, that there is some harmony. How do you ensure it? Tat is equal to Tvam. Paraswara Virodhinim, they are all opposite to each other. And so you have that same Brahman. One is Tama Pradhana, the other one is Malina Sattva Pradhana, another is Suddha Sattva Pradhana. They are all opposed to each other. How do you now say that they are one and the same reality? In what sense, at what level? We have a problem. Therefore, he's saying, Tam Muktva. Now you try to discard those qualities which are opposed to each other. Then that particular fundamental reality, which is common to all three, that is what you assume, that is what you accept as the ultimate truth. How do you do it? उसको कैसे करें, कैसे समझे? अखंडम सच्चिदानंदम महावाक्येन लक्ष्यते. So you will go and reach. So there is something called a bit of hair splitting, little of philosophical argumentation here. In the Sanskrit hermeneutics, making sense of it, there is something called Padartha Lakshana and a Vakyartha Lakshana. What is Padartha Lakshana? So if that's a pada, there is a word, and there is a popular meaning that refers to, that this word refers to, but you are trying to have something else in your mind. You want something else to be understood by that word, that is Padartha Lakshana. Okay? Padasya Mukshyarthe Badhe Savdasya Tad Sambandhini. ठीक है, तदर्थ संबंधिनी अन्यस्मिन अर्थे pravritti, that is padartha lakshana. So pada has one particular inclination to refer to one particular object or meaning. You are abandoning because that cannot be referred to. How do I give you an example? Gangayam ghoshaha. So somebody says that Gangayam ghoshaha. So here Ganga, in Ganga there cannot be any house, a cottage on the Ganges. That's not possible. So Gangayam on the Ganges, now you will mean what? Okay, it must be Ganga Tata, banks of the Ganges. Because it doesn't make sense if you say Gangayam. So you would say Ganga Tate. That is the Padartha Lakshana. So Mukshyartha Tyage, because if you actually refer to the Mukshyartha, it doesn't make sense. It becomes Badhita. It becomes obstructed. Therefore, you're looking for an alternative meaning. It must be something else. You know, I'll tell you another way of understanding it. Somebody was having food and he says Saindhavam Anaya. Saindhava means whatever is Sindhu Samandhya. So the horses are also referred to as Saindhava. So Saindhavam Anaya. How do you make sense of it? Now he's eating food. Why should he look for a horse? So you say, but you are looking at an alternative meaning. Okay? When actually that alternative meaning, whatever, there is no possibility, you have to do Mukshyartha Tyaga. In case of Saindhava, there are two alternative meanings, you are picking up one. But when you are saying Gangayam, that Mukshyartha, that on the Ganges, that doesn't make sense. There can be nothing on the Ganges. Therefore, you are saying on the side, banks of the Ganges should be the way we should make sense of it. That is Padartha Lakshana. Okay. Now, Tattvamasi. So we will see how Vakyartha Lakshana is what. Similarly, when there is a sentence and there is a certain Mukshyartha, that becomes Badhita, Gangayam Koshaha. There is a cottage or there is a house on the sea or on the Ganges. That's not possible. So you will say Ganga means here Prabaha, and then it cannot be on something flowing water, so it has to be on the side of the Ganges. So Ganga Tate Goshaha. So on the banks of the Ganges, there's a cottage. So the whole sentence meaning now changes. Okay. So the Mukshyartha is Badhita or obstructed. It's not easy to make a Anvaya. You cannot what do you call it, decode that sentence to arrive at a meaning. Then you are trying to have an alternative meaning. That is what is called Vakyartha Lakshana. Now, Tattvamasi, if you look at this word, the Jiva cannot become Ishvara. It's not possible. How can the Jiva become Ishvara? Therefore, he's saying the Tat Padartha and the Tvam Padartha, what are the Upadhis? In the Tat Padartha, you have the Suddha Sattva, is that Malina Sattva Pradhana is in the Jiva. And in case of Ishvara, you have that Suddha Sattva Pradhana Maya, that is the Upadhi. Malina Sattva Pradhana Maya is the Upadhi in Jiva. So let us remove these Upadhis. They are creating confusion because they are opposed to each other. Kinchit Gyatva and Sarva Gyatva. These are the two Upadhis. Knowing a little, knowing everything. These are the Upadhis. Remove. What remains? Pure consciousness. Then there is no problem. So you remove these Upadhis, what remains is that Brahman. Because Brahma, having assumed these Upadhis, is appearing as Jiva, is appearing as Jada Jagata, and is appearing as Ishvara. If you remove these Upadhis, what remains? What was earlier will remain. Upadhis are gone. The labels are gone. And therefore, what purely it was will remain. That is how we make sense of it. Let's look at the commentary for the elaboration of it. Tritayim api tri prakaram api tama pradhana vishuddha sattva pradhana malina sattva pradhanatva bhedena uktam. So you have these three different adjectives or upadhis or labels, and you get rid of them. Okay? Tama pradhana vishuddha sattva pradhana malina sattva pradhanatva bhedena uktam ata eva paraswara virodhinim tam mayam. So these are mutually exclusive. Tam mayam muktva. Muktva means what? Parityajya. Muktva means not throwing out of the window. How? Bhaga tyaga lakshanya parityajya. You have that bhaga tyaga lakshana. We'll that becomes in the next verse. What is that bhaga tyaga lakshana? We'll make sense of it. Parityajya akhandam bheda rahitam. Now the Vedas are gone. There is no distinction. Upadhis are gone, Vedas are gone. Now this particular, you remember that landlord example, bring in again. That guy, having fully gone into a state of drunkenness, came home, and his assistant took his overcoat off, and then he started treating his own overcoat as the landlord, and he behaved like the father of that landlord. And he's saying, my son is drunk and don't disturb. Then what happens? His delirium subsides after a few hours. He becomes normal. He's no more in that drunken state. Where is the father and where is the landlord? He's ready to go to his office to work. He's no more drunk. He's not that tired landlord who needs sleep, who will get angry, and he's no more the father who wants to look after his son and protect him. They both are gone. He's ready, he wears his dress and goes to office. This whole drama comes to an end. Because of the alcohol, the whole drama was happening. Similarly, this Srishti, the Jiva, Ishvara, all these distinctions are there because of the Maya, and this Maya has different variants of it. One is that Suddha Sattva Samparna Maya, Tama Pradhana Maya, Malina Sattva Pradhana Maya. Okay, get rid of these labels. What remains? Pure Brahman. Therefore, he is saying, Paritajya Akhandam Bheda Rahitam Satchidanandam Brahma Mahavakyena Lakhyate iti uktam. So, with the help of Mahavakya, you try to make. Now, I will just refer to again how that remains. The same Bhashya, the same mantra, 12th mantra of the Ashtama Brahmana of the 3rd chapter of the Vidyaranya Upanishad. Bhagavan Shankaracharya says, Sa eva nirupadhihi kevala suddha svena svabhavena akhyaram para uchyate. When he is free from these upadhis, that Brahman himself, he becomes Jiva, he becomes Ishvara. Then if you remember, Sa eva himself, nirupadhihi, without upadhis, kevalam suddham svena svabhavena, which is very essential nature, akhyaram para uchyate, nakyaratiti akhyar. It's beyond all. There is absolutely no gain or loss, no attributes. Okay, that is the para thing. Tatha hiranya garva avyakrita devata jati pinda manushya tiryak pretadi karya karana upadhi upadhivi vishishta tadakyaha tadrupo bhavati. Now this is the beauty of it, this whole thing. So the same Brahman assumes the upadhi of Hiranyagarbha, Karya Brahma. Okay. Then he becomes what? Avyakrita. Okay. He becomes that in all this. Devata, Avyakrita, then Devata, then Jati, Pinda, all this. These are upadhis. He becomes Manushya. Tiryak means animals. Pretadi becomes spirits. Same thing. Okay. Karya Karana Upadhi Bhihi Vishishtaha. Defined with these kinds of causative and consequential upadhis as products, both cause and effect. As these upadhis, Vishishtaha Tadakyaha, it assumes those names. Tadrupo Bhavati assumes those forms. It assumes those names and forms. Tatha tad ejati tanna ejati. That Brahma, it moves very fast. No, it doesn't move at all. These contradictory statements are true because it is sopadika and nirupadika. Tat ejati, it moves. Tadna ejati, that Param Brahma doesn't move. With upadhi, it moves. Depends on how you're looking at it. Tad ejati, tanna ejati. And then iti vakhyanam. Atma eva idam sarvam. That Brahman is verily all. Na anyad asti drashta. Vidyaranya 3:7-23. The na anyadati drashta. This now, for example, who is the witness of the supreme witness? No one. It itself is the witness of everything. It is the creator of everything, but it itself is everything that is manifesting as this whole reality. Ityadi srutayaha na virudhyate. There is absolutely no contradiction in these apparently contradictory statements. Therefore, he is saying, Tasmad upadi bhedena eva esham bheda. That Jiva, Ishvara, and Jagat, this bheda, Bhagavan Shankaracharya is saying, very prophetic, very insightful, intuitive statement. What does he say? Tasmat, therefore, in the light of what the Vedas say, what the Upanishads say, Upadi Bhedena eva esham Vedaha. The distinction of these so-called entities is in by virtue of their upadhis only, the suppositions. Na anyatha, not in any other way. Ekam eva advitiyam iti avadharanat sarva upanishadsu. Because Brahman is ekam eva advitiyam. That is the fundamental. That is the, that is the be all and end all of everything. There's nothing beyond this statement. Because ultimately it's be all, it is the key statement in the Vedas, in the Upanishads. Therefore, he says, whatever we say, that Sachidananda Brahma is Veda Rahita. The Vedas are Upadhi Vedas. There are no real distinctions. Of course, the Dvaitavadis, Madhvacharya, they will say, no, these are real Vedas. Who told you there are no Vedas? Ramanujacharya will say, no, there is some minor, there is Advaita, but there is Vishishta, there is some minor distinctions between Jiva and Ishvara. So they will have their own arguments. There is Bheda Bhedavadi, there is Achintya Bheda Bhedavadi, there are different Suddhadvaitavadi. Different people have their own theories. Okay, the Suddhadvaita will come very close to the Advaita, but in a way they don't accept Maya. So they only go up till the Saguna Brahma, not beyond that. So these are these minor distinctions in the arguments put forth by different proponents of Vedanta from their own perspectives. But what Shankaracharya says, don't you ever forget that fundamental statement of the Vedas, Ekam eva advitiyam. If that is true, how do you explain all these statements referring to some distinction, some Veda? There must be only apparent. They must be only with regard to the phenomenal reality. That is how mentioned. So let's go to the next very simple one. We will be quickly finishing it. Nanu evam lakshana vritya vakyartha vadanam ko drishtantam ityasankhya aha. So can you give me an example? How do you have this vakyartha bodha from Tattva Mashyadi that everything is Brahman? Then he is explaining. Soyam ityadi vakyeshu virodha tad idantayoho tyagena bhagayo reka asrayo lakshate yatha. Actually, I thought we could finish it today because we have already discussed it at length last week. So ayam devadattaha. So you have that past tense. He was there, now he is here. That was a little boy, this is a grown-up man. He was a little naughty guy, this guy is very brilliant, well established, professional, has a wife, has a child, has a social station. So ayam ityadi vakyeshu. In these kinds of statements, so ayam devadattaha virodha tatta idantayoho. Tad idantayoho. You have that kala bheda, past and present. There were few attributes which are dependent on that time variation. And you have a new set of variables which have emerged, or attributes, which are about so many years he has spent on earth. He's already 36 years old. And then he was only 6 years old. 30 years have passed in between. So the attributes have changed. Okay, get rid of the attributes. The person remains the same. Tyagena bhagayor ekaha. So the bhaga tyaga, what bhaga will remove? What is parashvara virodhi? Bhagayor tyagena eka ashraya lakhyate yatha. What is the ashraya of these two? The little Gurudatta's son. Son of Gurudatta remains the same. That is the ashraya of that same body. The same body was 3 feet, now it is 6 feet, 6 feet 3 inches or whatever. So these ashraya remain same. The jiva remains the same person. The person remains the same. Eka ashraya lakhyate yatha. That is the example. Soyamati devadattaha ityadi vakyesho tad idantayoho tad etad deshakala vaishistya lakshanayoho tad etad deshakala. You're in school together. Now you're meeting him in a conference hall. Tat desha, etad desha, different. Locations are different. Tat kala, etad kala, different. That was a certain particular year, and this is a certain particular year. Kala yoho dharmayor virodhat, and then the dharma that you are associated, attributes of that little boy and attributes of this grown-up, well-established guy. Dharmayor virodhat aikya anubhavatte. Then you cannot have that aikya. That is one person. Bhagayor virudhangsayor tyagena. So those aspects of these two individuals that you had seen and you are now watching, remove the parasvara virodhi, mutually contradictory aspects, remove. Ek ashrayaha devadatta swarupam ekameva. That verily is devadatta. Yatha lakhyate. The way you understand, same way try to understand tattvamasi. We'll now take it forward in the next class, and we'll just cross the timeline. I'll stop here. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnamad